Morning, everyone. My name is Laura, and I am the volunteer and events coordinator for the Calgary Horticultural Society. Welcome to our Seed to Table session on everyday soil amendments. So, the Seed to Table series is offered in partnership with the City of Calgary. The focus is on eliminating waste and pollution and conserving resources. It is a shift from a throwaway mindset to one that extends the life cycle of goods, food, and resources through better design and continuous reuse so nothing goes to waste. The Seed to Table series is a low input growing initiative that goes through each of the steps required in a gardening journey. And the classes and resources offered in this series will help you become increasingly self sufficient, save money, and reduce waste. So before we get started, I would like to share with you the Society's land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge the enduring and active relationship of Indigenous people with this land, specifically the area in which we inhabit today, also known as the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7. The Society, as an organization, is focused on the well-being of the land. We endeavor to honor Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis rights and relationships with the land and the ability for all to grow, live, work, and play within this territory. Thank you. Just a little bit about the Horticultural Society. If you have not heard about us, we are a registered charitable nonprofit organization celebrating 117 years of cultivating Calgary's gardening community. And one way we do this is our mission is to encourage that in gardening for the enhancement of our environment and quality of life. And one way we do this is through sessions like this one. So I would now like to introduce our instructor, Mike Dorion. Mike loves food. So that took him on a journey these last 15 years, starting with obtaining his permaculture design certificate, creating his business, Living Soil Solutions, co-founding Highfield Regenerative Farm, and making lots and lots and lots of compost. His latest project is The Green Sheep, formed with his wife, Eve. They are forming a new flock focusing on education around soil health to human health, all grounded in super tasty, real, and wholesome, highly local and nutritious, completely yummy and flavorful, and did I mention tasty food? So food that makes one feel happy. So welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you. That was awesome. Best red one yet. Usually there's some stumbling on it, but I did that on purpose. Okay, let's get into this. We got lots to cover. So, all right. I'm just going to push myself off to the side here. So, we're talking about everyday soil amendments. So, we're going to get into the gist of, do admit. Oh, and my button's not working, but there we go. So we already talked about some of this stuff, just going through. So this one is really going to focus on just being that much more self-sufficient, but also we're not going to spend any money. We're going to do it all on the cheap because I like to try to be as frugal as possible. And I guess my mom raised me well there coming off the farm. So here we go. So we already talked about that side of it too, and then eliminating the waste. So let's get into the nitty gritty of it. So before we start talking about amendments for the soil, let's just have a little quick chat about soil itself. So what does the soil need? And an easy one to think about this is, well, what do we need as humans? We're not talking about the fancy cell phones and the cars and the designer clothes or anything, but the basics, right? So we need food, we need oxygen, we need water, we need shelter. So the soil and all the little critters that we can or cannot see in there need all that stuff as well. So if we can keep that on our brain pan and keep that plugged in there, then we'll be able to make sure that we can treat and respect the soil as much as we would want to be treated and respect, right? So it's kind of that whole tit for tat kind of thing. So keeping that in mind. So the big thing that happens is the soil grows all these plants. And when it grows something that we can eat, like these tasty tomatoes here, so it puts all that energy into, doing the process of photosynthesis, taking that energy from the sun, putting it into new leaves and flowers to attract the pollinators, and then it makes that beautiful fruit after, which then it wants to really just have babies, right? So a lot of energy has been put in there, all its genetics and everything, so that it can have babies and grow them next year. But we take that away and we put it on, like a bacon sandwich because it tastes really good. But that's so much energy that we take away that when we do that, we got to put something back, right? So that's where this whole fertilizer industry is blown up huge, is because they've touted it only on giving those nutrients back to the plants. But if we focus back on actually giving back to the soil, which I'll chat about here more shortly, then we're going to have a lot more success. So anytime we take, we want to give back. So think of like in a forest or in a natural prairie, the system is perpetually going because plants are growing and dying, growing and dying. Any animals that come through there, they nibble a little bit, but then they will poop there, they'll pee there a little bit. So they're always giving back too. And then when they die, their bodies are given back to the system, right? So that there's no waste in nature. The only the only product of waste comes from us humans. And if we're supposed to be the smartest ones, well, maybe we're missing a few things there. So we want to give back. So yeah, we could go out and apply some, synthetic fertilizer and throw some stuff around like that, but that's not always the best case. And that's almost like the band-aid fix, like it's not a long-term solution. It's just the quick fix. So, and as we've started to see for more and more research, it's not not providing all the answers that we'd hope for, right? So it actually has longer term detrimental effects than just those quick benefits. So where a lot of that the synthetic fertilizers are is they're focusing on feeding the plant so that so if they're putting out a synthetic nitrogen there, hopefully that plant is taking up as much as it can in that moment, and being water soluble, it's moving up with the water. But then whatever it doesn't take up just flows through the system, right? Which then can be a little bit detrimental down the line. Where we want to focus on feeding the plant, or sorry, I just said that, not feeding the plant, feeding the soil. So when we feed the soil, just like in nature, as Mama Nature intended, the soil then takes care and feeds the plant. The soil has a relationship with the plant. The soil fends and gets the plant the things that it needs, but in a relationship that they both win, so there's a symbiotic relationship there. So if we focus on giving the soil the things it needs, the oxygen, the water, the food, the shelter for the critters in there, then the soil is going to be a lot more resilient to grow any plant that we really want. Okay. So that's kind of the ticket there. So when we're growing in our gardens and in the soil, we have that ability of that relationship of the plants working with the organisms in the soil. And there's always going to be interaction of some kind of critters, whether we can see them or can't. But when we're in containers, we have to remember that there's no connection to the soil. There's no connection to the earth. So we have to make sure that we give a lot more to these gardens because they don't have that relationship of all these organisms coming and going. We can put some stuff in there and artificially get it going, but like an earthworm's not going to migrate into your container unless you put it in there, right? But it needs to have some food to keep it in there as well so that it survives. So some of these things that we're going to talk about today will be able to keep um, outdoor plants, indoor plants, and anything in pots rocking and rolling on the cheap. So let's talk about some of the traditional methods first. Now, these are going to be looking at things that we've talked about on this seed to table before. So, composting. Composting is one of the big ones, right? So we can do that many different ways. We can do a thermophilic compost pile where we're getting active into it and flipping it, and it's our workout as well. So we're getting it to temperature and then flipping it and then letting it cool and then bringing it back up to temperature. And something like that, we could have something to use within, a couple weeks. put it to use. Then we've got our passive ways of doing compost where we're just piling different organic matter in different formats, whether it's in a container like this Darth Vader helmet, or just in a pile in the backyard. And that way, we're just mimicking kind of what's going on in the forest. And then that'll decompose and break down. And now we have some kind of an amendment that we can put back into the soil. Or we can use vermicomposting and use the worms, right? So they all have little different tactics of getting to the same ending. So a nutrient-rich product that is also very balanced and diverse in life. So all those little organisms that we can't see, and then maybe when we let it go for long enough, we can start to see the other ones like the springtails and the mites, and then sow bugs and other critters getting in there to start to shred things up in a smaller way. So the objective for when using composting is, and when we're putting the compost to use in our beds and our containers, or even in our house plants, is we want to provide food. Providing that kind of structure there actually helps hold water and nutrients in place a lot better, right? So then it also brings that nutrient. And usually compost is like a sponge. It can hold a super high amount of water compared to just regular kind of soil. And then the competition side is where we're also bringing a different diversity of organisms. So those microorganisms that we can't see, and then maybe some critters that we can, that are keeping some of the non-beneficial critters at bay. So that's always a bonus, just to keep that stuff. So compost is definitely one of the easy ones to do. And you could do it at your house. Maybe you don't have the space, so you can do it at one of the community gardens. You could start a club. There's a compost club, I believe, still going on in Calgary that we had started at Highfield. There might be even a couple now. And so don't do it by yourself. Join with other people and figure it out. And when your compost is ready to go, you're going to be able to just kind of slide it between your fingers, and it should feel a little bit greasy almost. So that's that production of humus that's in there. So you know that compost is stable and mature now, and you're going to get the maximum benefit out of it. So then on the vermicomposting side, so this has become popular because a lot of people, they're like, well, I don't have a backyard. I live in an apartment. Okay, well, you can get a little Rubbermaid bin or get inventive and do something in a 5-gallon pail or whatever, where you can put the worms in and then give them what they need to survive. So their essentials are, they need to have a lot of food source. So that's going to be our food scraps. Where a compost pile is at that 50% water, we can go a little bit higher up into like 60, 65%. The worms don't mind a little bit more moisture. We want to give them what's called bedding. So that's going to be a lot of our carbon products like shredded cardboard or newspaper or straw. I've even played around with a little bit of wood chips and sawdust. And then making sure that it's all aerated enough. And then even if the bin that they're in has holes in it so that air can get in there. And then the one particular thing with the composting worms is they typically like it where the temperatures are kind of more room temperature. They're a little bit nitpicky when it gets really cold because their metabolism and they start to move real slow. So they're not going to compost as much. But when we get too hot, it's uncomfortable for them and they're going to try to skid out of town. So you don't want a bin and worms escaping en masse. It's not a pretty sight. So that's just some of the typical ways of that. And then, there's other ways of you can do bokashi, which is kind of a fermenting style compost. Again, like I said, join with some other people and do it at different properties or at different community gardens. And then there's even these like little dehydration units that you could put your food waste in, and it just pulls out a lot of the moisture and kind of crumbles them up, so it looks almost like potpourri or whatever, but it's all food waste. So that's a kind of a way of dealing with the food waste instead of just trashing it, right? So that's a big part of it is we want to make sure that we're getting that life. So once we have that life in place, then we can start using some of these other techniques that I'm going to talk about to keep them going so that they're providing the plants with everything that they need. Okay. So the life part is key. We always want to make sure that we get that going. And that's where the compost is easy. So whether we're just doing it at a small scale just to get enough to do that, or we're working with other people, or we're sharing or trading, if somebody's got a big yard and they're doing it, we're doing that stuff to get it real far. So then this is a big part of what I ran my business off for a long time, was just taking that high quality compost or the high quality worm castings and just turning it into a liquid solution. So then that way we could spread it out a lot more efficiently, but then also we could stretch it that much further as well. So instead of taking, so for example, a cup, 1 cup of good compost, I can get 20 liters of compost extract out of that, which can go a lot further than that 1 cup, right? So that's just a technique to also get some of that life into your, instead of just trying to top dress all your containers or your whole garden with compost, you can just do a compost extract or a tea or or an aerated compost tea. And then that way you can get the biology in place just a lot quicker, almost like you're watering your garden. So that's a really easy technique as well. And that can be a whole course, the compost and the compost extracts all on their own. Now, another thing we want to look at is we want to start looking at like weeds. What's going on with these weeds? What are they doing? Like what are they trying to tell us? Because a lot of us just jump on them right away, like, whoa, okay, this is, I got weeds. Oh, this is embarrassing. What's wrong? I'm doing something wrong, right? But that's not the case. Like, we just have to know that most weeds are telling a story. So I wasn't able to put it up in the thing, and I don't know if my picture is probably really small, but I can put this up later. But this is a great book called When Weeds Talk, and it's by J.L. McCammon. J.L. McCammon, McCaman, When Weeds Talk. And it breaks it down into all these different weeds that grow in the prairies here, and then why. So, oh, is calcium really low? Does it got a magnesium high? Oh, where's all those nutrients? Oh, there's low humus. Oh, it's usually grows in a moist area, or the sand, or it's very sandy or sticky soil, or maybe that soil is very compacted, right? So it gives us an idea of what that weed is trying to fix and what its job or its role is. And then it's giving us clues of what's missing that we need to replace to do our job as the soil stewards to get it going. So that's a beautiful thing to start to learn and be a little bit more aware and care of, because it makes things a lot easier instead of just guessing all the time. So big time indicators. So learn to see what's growing and how we can adjust with that. So another reason why we want to do that is because a lot of those plants that we call weeds are actually what we call in permaculture biodynamic accumulators. So they're pulling up different minerals and nutrients up from the subsoils and then holding them in their leaves so that when they die, they can help stratify those nutrients back to the top layer of the soil again. But we can use them by growing them or going to harvest them out in the parks or anywhere else, and then bring them back, and we can either dry them and put them out into the garden. We can do a couple other things I'm going to talk about later, or we can even go back to that making a steep. So just like you would make a tea that you would drink, you can take that nettle or that comfrey or that yarrow, soak it in there. It'll pull out some of those nutrients out of that water or out of the plant itself, out of the leaves. And then you can just go and dump that around the soil, or even do a foliar spray with one of those little backpack sprayers or something. So great way to start to use the different plants that are already growing around in our communities, or maybe even already growing in our backyard. Um, where we have up at the farm, we've got a big garden out at the neighbor's place because we haven't broke our land yet. And the one place that he let his field go fallow was, there's so many different kinds of weeds there. I almost want to go there and categorize and index them all so that we know, okay, look, we can make this out of this and we can make this out of this and make our own kind of multivitamin liquid out of all these weeds that are already growing there. So again, just being aware and knowing, okay, I could put this to use. It's not an eyesore. It's not I got a weed to pull. I can put it to use. Okay, and then this is where using other plants too with the cover cropping has become very popular. So we can start playing around with these cool season and warm season plants, depending on what type of what part of the season it is. So spring and fall, we'd be using more cool seasons, and then in the kind of summers, excuse me, late summer, um, that's when we're doing more of the warm season kind of crops. And we can be playing around with these grasses, legumes, brassicas, broadleaf. So for example, a lot of our legumes, those are nitrogen fixers. So what a great way to use a plant that can grow with your other plants to help pull nitrogen out of the atmosphere and then be able to put it in a form that all the other plants can use. So we're talking about clovers, alfalfa, vetches, even peas and beans. A lot of these different plants can work very well in a guild with other plants to help provide all the nitrogen that they need. I love using buckwheat as just a biomass accumulator because it germinates and grows to maturity in 30 to 60 days, so very, very quick, but also grabs with all its flowers. It pulls in a lot of pollinators and brings in a lot of beneficial bugs that can keep a lot of the maybe ones that might be a bit more harmful at bay. And they do a big trick there. And then, with more compacted soils, we can use like the daikon radish where it produces a big tuber in the soil. So we let it stay in there and it can start to decompose and break that soil up that way. So there's different strategies of using different plants that you want to put into the soil, and they've got their own little strategies themselves. So we can work with some of these and stuff as well. So these are all kind of the traditional methods. Now, if we're going to start looking into talking about some of these other methods, I just want to be mindful that we should be kind of becoming a little bit more familiar too with what is our plant telling us if it is deficient in something, right? So getting any of these kinds of little diagrams down that can kind of give you an idea of, playing a little bit of Sherlock Holmes. You can be a little bit of a sleuth and figure out, okay, what is my plant trying to tell me? What is it missing? Especially in containers and indoor plants because of that barrier from any connection to the earth. So that can give us a good idea, right? So, with the phosphate, we're usually getting that little bit of purplish kind of showing up, right? Nitrogen can have a little bit of yellowing and then it comes along on the veins and stuff as well, right? The drought that can start to get a little bit of crispierness, or are we the soil drying out too fast, right? And then the chemicals, how it can burn, right? We don't want that kind of stuff to happen. So this is just one example. There's many out there that show really cool diagrams and different layouts of what you would be getting if you had different deficiencies in your plants. So we can talk about the periodic table of elements. Anybody want to go back to school right now? Okay, so don't let this be too daunting. I just want to show that, we can still learn this stuff and it's actually kind of fun and it can be fun, right? So we don't need to know a whole bunch of this stuff on here. Like when we look at most fertilizer packages, they're usually talking about N, which is nitrogen, P, which is phosphorus, and then K, which is potassium, right? So those are the three big macro ones. But then we could throw calcium and magnesium on there. So Mg is magnesium, Ca is calcium. And then what else will we talk about today? A little bit of sodium, so Na. And then, yeah, that's probably what we'll keep it at the most for today. We could go on and talk about boron, but that would be just boring. So we won't go into that too much. So that's the basis of what we're talking about here. So these are the main nutrients. So why Why is nitrogen important? Well, nitrogen gives that leafy growth. It's that what helps the plants grow, and it usually gives that dark green color that especially our sod farmers are looking for. And then phosphorus is really important for root growth, so helping the roots really dive down deeper and get a little bit more robust down into the soil so that they can pull more of that water and nutrient back up. And then they're really good at helping with the flowers and seed formation. Potassium is a great one for just all around kind of plant growth, but it's that big part of making the chlorophyll. So, which is also helping with that green, which is helping absorb more of the sun. So, we want to make sure that we're getting good levels of all these three for sure. But I also like to focus on the calcium, the magnesium, and any of the micronutrients that we can. But that's where the compost and stuff comes in really handy too. So it kind of covers that all in base, all encompassing. So these are going to be kind of old school techniques that are being kind of made new again. Because just like the circular economy that we were talking about here and how this donut thing works, well, I find anything that's old just becomes new again. Like even talking about some of the regenerative agriculture techniques and the management practices that are being used for that, they're all old school things that people used to do before the Green Revolution really took hand in major agricultural circles. So a lot of this stuff, maybe you might have heard, a grandma or a great aunt or somebody talk about. It could have been something they used a long time ago. And so hopefully I can ring a few bells, but also give you some new information here too. So, you make yourself a nice cup of coffee, you got a little bit of cinnamon, maybe some club soda left over from, the the family gathering you had the other day. Well, these can be mixed together, like a teaspoon of the cinnamon in a bowl with the coffee grounds, and then pour about a cup of the club soda in there. Well, now you've got this little solution that you can stir up, and you're getting some phosphorus, some nitrogen, and potassium that you can just go and water on your plants. Like you could do that once every couple of weeks. So a really simple way of getting some really good nutrients for your plants, the three basic big ones, for nothing, right? Most of this, especially the coffee, was just going to get thrown away anyway. And coffee grounds, that's a really good one to use as the nitrogen source in your compost as well. So another thing that you can put it to use on. Okay, matches. This one I haven't tried yet, but it piqued my interest, which makes sense because the match tips are sulfur, right? And sulfur is a big one that we need for our plants. There can be a lot of sulfur deficiency in plants quite often, and it actually helps the phosphorus be solubilized a lot quicker as well. So they work kind of in tandem. So with this one, you can soak the matches just for a couple hours, and then that'll help dissolve the tips off there. And then you just strain those out, and now you've got a solution that you can go and water the plants with again. Okay. So kind of a neat little one there. All right. We all like to have especially on rainy, drizzly days like this, you got a nice little warm tea at the end of the night. Well, those tea bags, again, something that we don't need to throw away. And depending on what kind of tea you're drinking, so sometimes we're drinking medicinal tea for medicinal reasons. Well, there's a lot of nutrient and availability that's not fully being pulled out of all those leaves. So we could put it to use and give it to the plants, right? And then the oats, they've got a really high use of potassium in them as well. So we could take these, mix them together, and then just boil it, get it up to boiling, so it'll pull that much more moisture out of, or more tannins and any of the nutrients and minerals out of the tea. And then now you've got a little solution, let it cool, strain that stuff out. Again, go and give it to your plants. So this is good for indoor and outdoor stuff. All right, this is one of my favorites because we like to eat a lot of potatoes. So potato peels. Now, this is one that I remember reading about, maybe how long ago was it? Maybe like 15 or 16 years ago. And if this can particularly be good too with the potatoes that start to go off because they can start to stink, but they're already starting to kind of ferment and rot a little bit. So with these potato peels, we just can put them in a bowl of water, cover it with foil. We can put that in the fridge for about a week or so. So it's going to kind of ferment and stuff in there a little bit. And then we pull it out, strain it out. You're going to have kind of like a nice kind of yellowish, kind of golden looking kind of water. And now you can again use that to water your plants for, every 2 weeks kind of thing. So we're going to get some phosphorus out of there, some potassium, and getting some of that valuable magnesium. This is really good for our outdoor plants and stuff here, specifically in Calgary, just because we do have really high calcium soils. So if we can get that calcium magnesium ratio a little closer, then the plants are able to actually absorb the calcium a lot better in the soil too. So that's a really good one to use quite frequently here in old Calgary out in our yards. And then the eggshells. So we were just talking about the calcium. So we use eggshells all the time, or, a lot of people eat a lot of eggs. So instead of just throwing those eggshells away, we can let them soak in some vinegar. That vinegar is gonna, so what we dry them first, crush them up, soak them in some vinegar, and you're going to start to get that little bit of a chemical reaction, and it's going to start to form a bit of foam kind of on top of the surface. So we could just take a scoop of that foam, put it there in a container, and then we'll top it up with water. And now you've got a foliar spray or liquid that you can go and spray the plants themselves or spray it around on the soil. And that's giving them that really good calcium level. So this is really good later in the fruiting stage of a lot of our plants because it's going to help them stratify that fruit and make those cell walls of those fruits and veggies a lot stronger. So they're going to be a lot more vibrant. Calcium is good to go. And just a little tidbit, most of the calcium in our soils is actually moved around through fungi. So if we till or we really disturb the soil quite a bit, especially in our gardens, the fungi gets beat up really quickly, and it's hard for them to grow back within that season without being inoculated or kind of pampered or babied a little bit. So then that calcium is a little bit harder to get pulled up into the plants. So that can usually affect a lot of our fruiting and the size of the vegetables and the fruit that we're growing. Oh, calcium. All right, another one. This one I haven't tried just yet. Yogurt. So just taking some yogurt and doing like a half and half, so 50-50 with water. And then this just turns into a liquid solution that we can just go and dump around the base of some of our plants. But then we could also take some of that and do like a tablespoon of the solution and mix it in with water and just spray it on the plants. And then that also acts as a little bit of like a fungal disease protection as well. So from like um, blights and that kind of stuff. So the lactis bacillus within the yogurt acts as kind of a antimicrobial against some of those fungal diseases. So that's kind of a cool little hack for that. So if you've got some greenhouse growing or some, cucumbers or tomatoes that are growing in a hot spot that maybe you're not getting some really good ventilation and you start to get some of that those fungal diseases showing up, give this a little shot and watch it go away. And all for again just stuff that we're going to end up putting into our GOPS. So okay, this one I haven't tried with the seaweed. I know that there's a lot of seaweed that's eaten by my daughter. Um, but I have to look because most of the times that stuff's covered in oil, so it won't be as beneficial. But a lot of this stuff I have composted a lot of lake weeds. So like Chestermere Lake, for example, they have a weed excavator that goes through the water all the time, pulling the lake weeds out. But also then any of the people that have the compost bins that live on the lake, they're always just full of the sea or the lake weeds. So you could take that stuff because it's super high in nitrogen and let it just dry out and then crumble it up into like little flakes and then sprinkle that around your plants. And then you can just water that in. Um, if anybody here lives by the ocean or whatnot that's listening to this now, you've got free fertilizer that washes up on the beach pretty much on a daily, right? So that stuff can be used quite often, and you get a lot of really cool growth hormones and like amino acids. Some of the like the store bought like seaweeds or kelp, liquid kelps, they're like, think of like on the East Coast, there's like 20 feet, 30 feet drops of the tide, and that kelp will all go down to the bottom, and it looks like it's all dried out and dead. And then the water tide comes back in, and it's back up again, like right up full. And just like the resiliency and the toughness in that creature is so crazy. So taking that life force from it and being able to put that into your gardens and stuff too is pretty huge. It can make a big, big difference. Okay. Oh, and then banana peels. Oh, Bananas. It's bananas. So bananas is another big one that just gets chucked all the time. But like if we can take that, you cut it up into smaller pieces, right? And then you just soak it for about an hour in water. That water is going to turn into a little bit of, like that kind of browny, light brown. Now you've got a great fertilizer again that you can just go and water your plants with. And you're getting phosphorus, you're getting potassium, calcium, and magnesium. So you're getting all these benefits of something that usually just gets thrown away. And don't get me wrong, I love composting stuff, but composting really is the last resource before we throw it away or use this stuff. So we could use the banana peels, pull some of that stuff out of it, but then still take that and put it into the compost. So, it's like how many things can we get out of this before it's considered waste? And if we can just keep putting stuff to use and not even create waste at all, well, holy moly, that's a huge bonus right there. So that's kind of the ultimate goal. What can we put to use? And when we're purchasing something, keeping that in your mind too, like, oh, okay, I can buy this banana peel, but I won't be making a waste because I can make a fertilizer first, and then the rest of it goes in my compost, right? Easy peasy. Now, these were a couple ones. I've tried one of them. I haven't tried all of them just yet. But these were all different kind of pest control ones because, well, sometimes they just happen, and that's okay. You know, a lot of bugs are opportunists. So I give them, I applaud them because they know how to get what they need sometimes. So it's pretty awesome. So using some of these things. So cinnamon, a great thing just as the powder, or you can make a liquid again just with it and spray down your plants is like an antifungal. So this is kind of similar to that yogurt one that can help with some of the blights, and then it's also really good with the fungus gnats, just the little black flies that we get every once in a while. This can be really effective with that as well. Taking red onion, 4 cloves of garlic, a couple tablespoons of cayenne pepper, mix it all up, let it soak for a little bit, right? And then we can strain that all out after about 12 hours or so in the fridge. And then we've got this like great solution that kicks the butt out of most pests as well. So they're not going to want to get close to your plants. There's a gentleman out in where's he? Out by Sundry. So Ear to the Earth Farm. This is a thing that he uses on his greenhouses and everything, but he snaps a bunch of the cloves, or not cloves, sorry, the garlic scapes, and that's what he uses. He ferments those garlic scapes and then he puts that together with some of this and sprays it out on his plants, and it works like a charm. So really good for aphids, spider mites, that kind of stuff, and keeping some of those critters away. Another one is using some olive oil. So a third cup of olive oil with a cup of water and then a teaspoon of dish soap. That's a really good foliar spray for keeping some of the pests and aphids and stuff like that away if you have some of that in the house. And then another one with using cinnamon and then milk. So about a cup of each, and then a teaspoon or so of cinnamon. And milk, when the sun shines on it, it actually starts to pull out antiseptic properties in it. So that's going to start to keep away a lot of our fungal and any kind of bacterial diseases, so the powdery mildew and that kind of stuff as well. But then really good with the cinnamon helping with the aphids and any other little critters that might be kind of giving our plants a bit of a run for their money too. So these are just some fun little ones like you get to play around with, and most of us already have a lot of this stuff in our house. So you don't have to go to the store and spend any extra money. So always a bonus. So if you want to learn more about those, there's this gentleman that he has a YouTube channel called Creative Explained. And so he does a lot of stuff on natural ways of making fertilizers and natural bug repellents and that kind of stuff, but then also cleaners and all kinds of stuff. So he's got this YouTube channel that he does, and he's really kind of like in your face and all that. But if you're a little bit more analog, he has put out a couple books. I haven't seen them yet. My brother had purchased them, and so he says they look really good and explain really simple and keeps things really easy too. So something to check out to take some of these a little bit further if you don't want to just hear them from this horse's mouth. Okay. All right. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is called, so you might need your BOA for this. So the BOA stands for Book of Acronyms. So Korean natural farming, or also called KNF, is kind of this cool style. It kind of has a blend of like permaculture with it, but it I like it because it's very tied to some of the soil and kind of geeking out and making all these different things too. So we're just going to touch base on a couple of the different practices and a couple of the products that they make. But it's not my fault if you become like this gentleman and you just do them all and you have a designated place for it, and it be kind of comes your little witch's brew place that you're making all your concoctions and stuff for your plants in your garden. So um, I could see this stuff getting very addictive, and I'm going to play around with putting on some workshops on making some of these liquids and other amendments probably later on this summer. So if you are interested, make sure to reach out and let me know that you are. So okay, let's look into it. So the first one is called a fermented plant juice. So basically, a lot of these things are looking at nature and seeing what nature has done so that we can work with nature to continue to make nature even stronger and more resilient. So realizing that we are a part of nature, and that if we can work within the same realms instead of trying to push the boundaries or pretend that we're not a part of it, then we're going to have a lot better success and be a little bit more plugged in with how things are working. So fermented plant juice, this is going and finding like plants like comfrey or dandelion or nettle or any of these like really cool, fast growing, aggressive plants, and going in the morning, cutting them down and harvesting a bunch of them. And then you take that weight and match it with brown sugar and you mix it together and you put it into a container like you were going to make sauerkraut or kimchi or anything like that. So instead of making something that you're going to eat yourself, this is going to be for your soil and your plants, and you let that sit and ferment. So what that's going to do is it's going to pull out all those nutrients out of all that plant material, kind of like what we were doing with the steep, but just a lot more aggressively. But then also what happens is in the steep, we're just pulling the minerals out. But when we get fermentation, that's when we're also getting life with that, right? So we're getting some of the critters that would be found in compost or just the natural healthy soil. And so then they're starting to create other compounds and changing things in the soil as well, right? So then we start getting different B vitamins and different things like that showing up within the ferment. So with something like that, we're just taking it and then we'll have this solution once we strain it out that can keep quite well for a long period of time, that we're just taking a spoonful to like a liter of water, and now we've got this great juice, nutrient diverse, biologically diverse solution that we can start to add to our plants, and for again doing very little, right? So a lot of these techniques, they were developed in Korea. Um, and I'm not sure if the gentleman that developed it is still alive, but there's a gentleman named Chris Trump. So Trump, like the president down in the States, not of relation, I don't believe. And he is really taken it to a different level in North America, specifically in the States. But he's got great videos and stuff like that that shows things step by step on how to make a lot of these. We just have to use our imagination of what plants we want to use in our own specific area. So just go walk around any park and any plant that looks really vibrant, put it to use. And that's where that biodynamic accumulators will come in handy too, right? So the more diverse plants that you pick, the more diversity of solution that you're going to have in the end base too. Okay, another one, fish amino acid solution. So the FAA. So this is taking like fish bits, the fish head, the fish bones. So just like all the parts that you would make like a fish broth out of. So we make a lot of bone broths here in the house. I haven't made a fish one yet, but I'm really, I don't know. There's just we've got a really fancy Chinese restaurant down the road, and you always just smell their broth going, but maybe I'm just keen on doing my own. But so we're doing the same kind of thing. We're cutting it up into small pieces by weight with the same amount of brown sugar, putting in a container and letting it ferment. Um, and it's gonna, fish has like some really good fatty acids, some good amino acids, really high in nitrogen, and some good levels of phosphorus as well. But then again, that ferment, as those critters in there start bubbling it and fermenting it, they're going to start creating a lot more different nutrients and vitamins and stuff in there as well. So again, a nice stable product that we're going to be able to put aside and be able to take little spoonfuls as we need in water to water our plants, and give them a little boost of some FAA. Yeah. All right. And then the water soluble calcium, WSC, right? We needed the BOA. So this is where we can take either meat bones, so chicken bones or bones from steaks or pork chops or whatever. We can take oyster shells. There's so many places that serve oysters in the city, and they just all throw the shells away. Or again, we can use eggshells. So the eggshells, we'll just want to make sure that we dry them and cook them well enough that the membrane part is cooked off and whatnot, because if there's a little bit of protein still there, that it could affect and make this go off. But we take these, break them up again really small, and then let them soak in vinegar. And it starts pulling out that calcium that's really good for like blossom end rot, really good at helping produce larger, more robust fruit in that process. And again, it's all waste products that just get thrown away. And I think it's always important to have some really good vinegar on end. You could use apple cider vinegar as well. It just has to be anything that's over kind of that um, 3% rate. So this is a good fun one, and we should all be making something like this, because that's the biggest one that's missing in most of our plants is the calcium levels. And once we get that calcium level up, because just like it's good for our strong bones, well, it's good for the plant's bones too. But plants don't have bones, Mike. Yeah, but if we look at a cell wall of a plant, it's very much like a bone structure. So it makes those plants and those cells that much stronger. So then that plant is more vibrant and it's more resilient. Because if it ends up just getting a whole bunch of nitrogen and grows really quick, but it doesn't have the calcium to match that, well, then those cell walls could end up being weak or disfigured, and then that much more susceptible to disease and pathogens. All right, now this one is again, this is one I haven't tried just yet. I've got a couple buddies that have, um, but we're hoping to, yeah, I should be able to get something going here next time we're out at the farm. But so this is this is taking basically indigenous life microorganisms that if you're walking through a forest or in a treed area, that you can actually see the fungi spread out. Like so it'd be like almost like that spider webby stuff, whether it's on a log or on some wood mulch or something on the ground. Then would be a place where you would take some cooked rice, you'd have it in like a wooden box like this or a basket like that. So like any liquor store or any of these places that even have old apple boxes, or you could just take a little old box and just screw a few holes in the bottom of it. Then you fill it with 3/4 with cooked rice, and then you go and you bury it a couple inches into this area where you found the fungal, or it looks like there's some microbial life there. And then you cover it, you bury it with the mulch and stuff that you'd pulled out for the 2 inches, and then you let it sit for 4 or 5 days. And then you come back and it should be all fuzzy. So that is okay. We've got those microorganisms have moved in and inoculated this. Now you can take that and make a solution with it, which now you can start to add and start to mix all these. So you can take the fermented plant juice, you can take the calcium one, and you can mix it with this one. So now you're getting that high microbial one with the calcium and all the nutrients out of your plants. So you can start making these like crazy supercharges of like amendments for nothing. And people are going to think that you're like a witch or a warlock. So hopefully we don't go back to the being burnt at the stake for just, creating cool things for our plants. So I think some of this stuff is so cool because, you know, we eat these things or we might drink these teas or do these things for all these nutrients and stuff for ourselves. But like we can do the exact same thing for the critters in the soil so that then the critters in the soil can take care of everything for our plants. Like it's just it's not too far off that we're very different, if you know what I'm saying. Like, they're all over us and when we die, we go back to the soil again. Well, we used to, but we need to make a practice of that again. So this KNF stuff, I'm really attracted to it because it is very permaculture styles, but it's looking at, what's going on with the healthy body to an unhealthy body. Well, it's typically tied to an unhealthy gut because that's kind of running the show. So if we've got a high diverse of microbes in our gut system, well, then that's taking care of most of the body's needs as we need a diverse microbiome within the soil, which then takes care of our ecosystem's needs. So it's like a respect for ourselves. So if we already respect ourselves enough that we can treat ourselves very well, then we're automatically going to treat our ecosystem the same way. So that's where that KNF is pretty cool because it just makes it a little bit more personable. Now, with a lot of this stuff, I want to make sure that, I don't know about that. I don't know about this. Well, you have to experiment and it's okay to screw things up. I screw stuff up on a regular, but it's okay. Like that's how we learn. Because if you don't screw things up, then you're not learning anything. And my daughter's at an age right now that I'm like, okay, yeah, it's okay to make a mistake, but she's like kind of turning into a teenager, so she doesn't want to hear it. So I have to I have to practice what I preach, right? So become the researcher. Have a little book, a notebook, and taking notes and taking pictures and play around with stuff because each one of us, our backyards are very different. So we're going to all have different experiences, and some stuff can be kind of cover the whole ball game, but a lot of the times we have our own little micro ecosystems that we're working with. And our soils might be very different, and we might have different trees growing in the area, right? Or maybe it's facing a certain way, so we get so much sun or the wind hits it, right? Like, so you are the expert in the end. And the expert always plays around, researches, and makes mistakes. But then you look and you ask questions, and then you tweak and you try again. That's all you got to do. So don't be afraid to experiment. And that's why I love this stuff because, you know, it gives me something hands-on to play with. And then I get to put aside, like, I'm like, oh, like a little school experiment or whatever. And then I get to pull it out and play with it and see how it affects my plants and what it does. Because in my introduction, it says, I love food, and I do love food. That's what I spend more money on it than anything. But if I can then do a lot of this stuff myself and save money on making myself be able to grow the best quality food that I can eat, well, then it's a no-brainer for me. So basically, a lot of this stuff might be a little bit overwhelming and this and that, but all it is just extra tools to your tool belt. So, as you become more aware and more comfortable with your aware or with your environment and your garden and your containers and your plants and whatever they're doing, you're going to be able to go, okay, I think that's what the problem is. I've got a solution for it, or I have a couple solutions, and this is what I have in my tool belt to attack it. So just be able to treat it that way. You don't have to know everything verbatim. These bloody cell phones that we have now, these mini computers, they're not phones, they're mini computers, and they have access to pretty much everything. So you can figure out what you need to pretty quickly. And the resource and whatnot of the Calhort Society is beautiful for that as well. And so when I usually talk with people, and I already kind of set it out from the very beginning here that, like, okay, we're not going to be spending any money. And that's true, but I don't want to look at it as just, money. Let's look at it as just wealth, right? So this whole perception that, oh, it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of this and that of my precious time. Well, but what are you going to gain from that down the road, right? By thinking critically, by asking questions, by doing something different, by learning something new. That is wealth to me. And then by growing really healthy food and plants and making a really healthy, vibrant, resilient ecosystem that you just love to sit and spend time in, that there is what life is all about. So that is where the costs really go down. So I think just in the end, because we are, this is what I truly believe that our purpose is on this planet, is just to be stewards of the land. And so the more we can understand it, the more that we can go and learn about it like this, or going out to a farm, or doing any kind of hands-on courses, the more that we're going to be able to provide value to ourselves, but then also the ecosystem and the people around us. So super important. That's one of my favorite pictures of my daughter from way back when she was still still yeah, you know what I mean. So in the end, the soil does not like being treated like dirt. And if we know all the things that we can do for it, and a lot of them can be in a way that we're saving money and being involved in this circular economy, and reducing our waste and reducing the amount of time and effort that we're driving around and doing all these other things looking for stuff for the solution, when most of the times we can come up with it ourselves. We know all this stuff, we just have to practice it. And so I want you to take some of these key messages back with you and just, what can you do just one thing to reduce your reliance? What can you do that can reuse something or put something to a different use, right? Where are you on this little journey? So, ask questions, keep learning, keep experimenting, keep practicing, and just have fun with it. Don't get frustrated. Just have fun, okay? And as we had said in the beginning, please, if you can fill out the evaluation on this, that would be super valuable, because we do like putting these on and like giving and bringing this information to you all so that, we can build a community of all of us doing and learning this stuff together. Because the more of us that are doing it, the more fun that we're going to have, right? All right. I'm sure we probably got a few questions there, but thank you to the city of Calgary, the old corporation of the city of Calgary, to help us here with these programs.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mike. Yes, we do have a few questions. So, and I also do encourage anyone to type in your questions as well, and we will read them aloud. So
All
just
right.
going back to the book, the McClellan book, Yvonne's asked, where might that book be available?
So I bought it. Where did I buy it? I bought it off of what did I get it from? Let it come to me. Acres, the Acres USA website.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's a great little
Yes, that
book.
one there.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Fantastic. And so Karina is asking about the water. So, would the water you use to boil an egg be just as good as the vinegar soak? So, for the calcium, or add vinegar to the boiled egg water? Question mark.
Oh. Yeah, like the vinegar will have a bit more of a chemical reaction to it. Um, so it will pull more of the calcium out because it's breaking it up a little bit. The boiled, you'd probably get a little bit out of that for sure, but the vinegar will be a lot more effective. Like you can actually see it actually like bubbling and making that little foamy broth that'll come off the top.
Excellent. And then another question. Also, your thoughts on potato and pasta water when that is not salted.
Yeah, those will both have nutrients in them. Like so they can that stuff can all be used. Like we used to use the potato water to put into gravy and stuff too. Like so there was still some more uses to it instead of it being dumped. So let it
Mm,
cool and then yeah, put her to use.
excellent. And another question, how do you know what nutrients your soil is lacking?
So that's where I had shown the diagram of the different leaves. So most plants will show if they're super deficient in nutrients. There'll be a different discoloring, so the veins in the leaves, or there'll be a certain color that'll show up. Like for example, like phosphorus, there'll usually is some kind of purpling of the leaves. So those can be good as indicators. There's quite a few different guides that you can find on the old internet, that you can use as guides for that. Um, there is also, if you want to go a bit more higher class, you can actually do soil testing or tissue or sap analysis testing, which will give you real-time data of what the plant actually has in it. But I just like to use it as good favor of like, hey, anytime I can add a little bit extra nutrient into any of my plants, and if I've got good carbon in there, like good organic matter, like the soil's not really crappy, then it'll just be held in space until the plant needs it.
Excellent. Just while everyone's still answering their questions, I've also just put the evaluation link into the chat if people find
Ah,
that
yeah.
clicking on the link is easier. Um, Yeah, so it's just in there. Yes, would definitely appreciate any feedback that you might have. Sally is asking, my rose bush has yellowing leaves. Online, I'm finding that it's iron deficient because it's the whole leaf, but the veins are green. Is the amount of iron in worm castings enough, or should I be doing something else?
Okay, so with that, worm castings would be really good. That would help it. It might need a little bit of a bump. So you could do something like azomite, which is a glacial rock dust. That would give a little extra boost there of just a bunch of the kind of micronutrients, and then that should be able to level you off there. The rose bush should be pretty happy after that.
Perfect. We have a question about coffee grounds. Can you use coffee grounds straight on soil without any processing or composting of them?
Yeah, there's quite a few people I've seen where they just take them and just throw them out into the garden as is. So some of that will volatilize up into the air and stuff just because the sun will be shining on it. But if you just give it a quick water and after, you will get some of that nitrogen that will percolate down in a little bit. Just be careful not to do it too often. If it gets large amounts of it, it can start to go a bit of acidic just because coffee is naturally got higher tannins like that. So
Great,
that is a technique that could be used.
great question. We have a question from Claire. Can you accidentally overdo it with soil amendments? Can you add and throw off the balance of the nutrients?
Yeah, and that's where I do everything in moderation. So a lot of those things that I talked about, you only have to do, you would do like once every couple weeks, and it's just very small volumes too. Um, when when you're doing something with like compost, and you've got the higher levels of good organic matter, that also does become a bit of kind of a springboard for you to save grace a little bit on if you are adding or you think you might be adding too much stuff. So it'll actually hold some of that stuff in space first before it actually hits the plant. So that can be a bit saving grace too.
Excellent. And then just following up, oh, and Karina has asked, what nutrients would you get from the coffee grounds, which you had already answered. But yes, please ask any more questions or type them in the chat. I do find that the plants really will tell you. Those are the first indicators of what plants are lacking and what nutrients are lacking. Also adding that there are, I know you can also um, pay to have your soil analyzed, but there's also the soil analysis kits that I've seen at Canadian Tire as well. That's probably the next step. That's another cheaper option if people are wanting to test their soil with just a home-based kit. So,
Yeah.
thoughts on those types of kits that you can find in some garden centers as well, Mike? What do you
Yeah,
figure?
like yeah, those work pretty decent. One just has to be careful with them a little bit is because sometimes they'll show things based off the pH of the soil. And
Mhm.
depending on the water that you're using, our water is already a little bit more on the alkaline side. So it can kind of alter what the end results will be on that. So even using something like a distilled water or even trying a different bottled water that could give you a little bit of a different result. So you test the water on its own first so that you can kind of see where the varying degrees are and then go
Mhm.
from there. And then I always like to just, from in between of looking at what weeds are growing, like if dandelions are growing, I know the soil needs calcium. If thistles are growing, I know I'm low in iron and I need more calcium too. Like, so that, these weeds, as you get a bit more familiar with them, tell you the story of what's going on. But then just even being a bit more intimate with your soil, oh, does my soil smell okay? Does it smell off? What kind of critters am I seeing in it? Does it have moisture? at the top levels, or is it going down deeper than that, right? Um, so just becoming more and more familiar, you're going to be able to kind of have a better idea of what the soil needs just to keep it going and being able to do what it needs to do.
Excellent. And I'm sure with a more and more practice, we will all get better at trying to to identify any issues. Yvonne is asking, I use montane mulch on my gardens. Does it add value as it breaks down?
Yeah, of course, because that's all old tree bark that's breaking down, right? So as that starts to decompose, that's going to become fungal foods. So that's going to feed any of our fungal biology in the soil. And then any of the other little critters like, springtails, mites, sow bugs, they're going to be eating it and trying to shred it into smaller bits. So as they're moving around and pooping and doing all their stuff, they're lightening and aerating the soil on a good level as well. And then depending on how long some of that mulch sat, it might have its own fungal community that it brings in as well. So you're also getting a bit of diversity there too.
Excellent. And a question about black medic. Um, what is a good solution for black medic?
Yeah, I'm just that just came up and I saw that. I'm just seeing if it's in the book here or
I know a lot, oftentimes black medic can be confused with clover, and a lot of people think it does look like clover and to let it grow, but it does grow, and its stems are quite woody. And so it's not as soft as the clover, the white clover that you would uh, be purposefully growing. So I know some people do want to rid black medic out
yeah.
of their yards.
Do we know if it's called by another name?
Let
Not
me see if
showing
we
up
can
in this book
find
here. Oh no,
out.
never mind. I found it here. So what do we got here? So Black Medic is showing that we have high, very, very high potassium levels, very high magnesium, high iron, high sulfur, high zinc, high boron, high chlorine, high selenium. So low humus, low porosity. So the soil is probably a bit compacted as well. And then it would be more bacterial side of the soil instead of a bacterial fungal balance. Poor residuals, and then the soil is probably sticky and high aluminum. So that's a big one. So the high magnesium. So that would tell me that if the magnesium is out of whack, that then I would do one of those calcium solutions. Use one of the calcium solutions on where the black medic is, and that would start to get that magnesium calcium ratio back out of whack. And
Mhm. Excellent. Hope that helps. We have a question about eggshells. Do eggshells need to be broken down with vinegar, or can you just dry them and crush them and put them directly into the soil?
yeah, you can do that as well. That's just a little bit of a simpler step. Just you then have to give it time because the calcium will take a while to solubilize off of the eggshell itself. So we're just using the vinegar to help speed that process up so that then the calcium is more available that much quicker.
Perfect. So, Mike, I would love to hear, what vegetables do you grow? I mean, you have all this knowledge, and I
Yeah,
would be jealous. What do you grow? And especially or I think our kids are around the same age. What do the kids like to eat? Like,
yeah. Snap peas are like the favorite right now.
yes.
Um, just because, yeah, it's like opening a little present every time, right? But yeah, we've got a huge plot of garlic. Like I think there's probably about a half an acre of garlic, and then we we tailed back on the potatoes this year, but we went very kind of Ukrainian styles this year. We did potatoes, beets, carrots, onions, a bit of cabbage, and then we do the the little baby sugar pumpkins just because they store so well. And then
Mhm.
I fell in love with those kibachi squashes, like the little green squished ones.
Yeah,
Yeah, like in a stew, like they're so yummy with chunked up beef or venison or bison. So yeah, those are the big ones that we're growing this year. So
that's amazing to hear. Do you grow any flowers along, or is
yeah,
ma
we've
vegetables your main?
yeah, we've got so I've got a little bit of cover crop stuff that I had done the last couple of years. So I've got some phacelia that I've got out there, and then we've got some fireweed that we just put out and stuff as well. So
All to bring in pollinators, right? Like
yeah,
that's what we want to bring in as well. Always good to have a balance. Um,
yeah,
if there are any other questions, please type them in the chat, or Mike can I can just continue chatting about what soil amendments. And this, it really is. I love the fact that you did delve into the Korean natural farming, and then I had started looking a little bit into that, but just to be able to learn more and more about the fermentation of the oh, like everything. So the all the juices, and it really is eye-opening what other practices are out there, and of course to incorporate the permaculture. Lots of people are saying that they've really enjoyed this. Thank you. So that's a fantastic comment to get from Mary Jo there. But
thank you.
yes, it's so many different and new practices, and this is something that I've always wanted to incorporate as well, learning from my grandma who who grew here in Calgary, composting before composting was known, and what she
Yeah.
did, and my big thing is to try to replicate the type of Asian vegetables that she grew in her garden here in Calgary. So
Cool. Cool.
that's
Yeah,
what I remember.
that's awesome. Well, and that's a huge thing that I think we're kind of missing a little bit in our society right now is we don't have that multi-generational interaction as often, and so there's a ton of experience and knowledge that's just not being passed down. So
Mhm.
then we end up spending more time on a phone or something, and then we might come across something, and we're like, "Whoa, this is really cool!" But reality, it was, yeah, our grandparents were doing it a long time ago, and they're like, "What? Yeah, that's nothing new." But somebody found it, and it's cool, and it works, and rebranded it almost, right? So
Exactly, the
yeah,
whole rebranding it.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think we're gonna wind it down if no one has any more questions. I do wanna say a huge thank you to Mike for, so enlightening, fantastic topic. You can learn so much, even though you think you might know everything, there's always more to learn about amending your soil. I do want to ask, if anyone hasn't filled in the evaluation form, so the link is on the screen as well as in the chat as well. And people, of course, are saying it's so interesting. Thank you so much. Super informative and easy to follow. See, that's key, right? Easy to follow. That's
All right, all right.
Mike, always a great time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And of course, sharing the resources. People are thanking you for the resources as well. Thank you again, Mike, and thank you, everyone, for joining. And we will see you at the next Seed to Table. So we always have Seed to Table information on our website. So that's the calhort.org. You can scroll down to the Seed to Table tab. We have a lot of in-person Seed to Table classes and workshops happening. But just check out our What's Happening page on calhort.org. So thank you, everyone. Keep dry in this drizzly, wet weather that we're having. And have a great evening, everyone. Have a great evening, Mike.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.